rain in Seattle always felt like a prelude to a funeral, even on days that were supposed to be celebrations. I adjusted the cuffs of my bespoke tuxedo, the silk cool against my wrists, and looked out the window of the penthouse suite at the Obsidian Grand Hotel. Down below, the city was a smear of grey and neon, oblivious to the fact that Julian Thorne, CEO of Thorne Tech, was about to engage himself to the woman he had loved since his sophomore year of college, Elena. Just saying her name usually brought a warmth to my chest, a stabilization to the frantic rhythm of my life as a startup billionaire, but today the rain made me shiver. I turned back to the room. It was opulent, filled with white roses and crystal, a stark contrast to the man sitting uncomfortable on the velvet chaise in the corner. My father, Arthur, he looked out of place, as he always did in my world. He was wearing a suit I had bought him, one that fit perfectly but which he wore like a straitjacket. His hands, calloused from decades of farming in the desolate plains of Nebraska, rested awkwardly on his knees. He was a man of earth and silence, a man who had raised me alone after my mother died when I was 6. To the elite of Seattle, he was a ghost at the banquet, an embarrassment I had fought hard to ignore but loved too fiercely to hide. "Are you okay, Dad?" I asked, pouring a glass of scotch I knew he wouldn't drink. He looked up, his eyes clouded with a fatigue that went deeper than jet lag. He smiled, a crinkling of weathered skin that reminded me of dry riverbeds. "I am fine, Julian," he said, his voice a gravelly rumble. "Just a lot of fancy people. You look good, son. Your mother would be, she would be beside herself." I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. I wanted him to fit in. I wanted Elena's family, the prestigious and shark-like Montclairs, to respect him, but I knew they saw him as a relic, a dirt-poor farmer who had somehow produced a tech prodigy. Elena, to her credit, had always been sweet to him, or so I thought. I checked my watch. The engagement ceremony was starting in an hour. Elena was down the hall in the bridal suite, preparing. "I have to go handle a quick issue with the catering, Dad. You stay here, rest. Don't open the door for anyone unless it's me." He nodded, closing his eyes, and I left him there, a solitary figure in a room that cost more per night than he used to make in a year. I was in the lobby arguing with the florist about the shade of hydrangeas when the scream tore through the hotel. It wasn't a cry of surprise. It was a high-pitched, curdling shriek of terror that stopped the ambient jazz and froze the chatter of the guests. My blood ran cold. I knew that voice. "Elena." I dropped the flowers and ran. The elevator ride felt like a descent into hell, the numbers ticking up agonizingly slow. When the doors pinged open on the penthouse floor, chaos had already erupted. Staff members were huddled near the door to the bridal suite, not my room but hers. Why was the screaming coming from her room? I pushed through the crowd, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. The door was flung open. Inside, the scene was a tableau of nightmares. Elena was huddled on the floor, her dress torn at the shoulder, weeping hysterically, her makeup smeared across her face. Standing over her, looking bewildered and terrified, was my father. And holding him back, punching him in the ribs, was Marcus Montclair, Elena's brother-in-law and the regional director of the powerful Sterling Group. "Get off him," I roared, throwing myself into the fray. I shoved Marcus back. He stumbled, his face twisted in a sneer of disgust. "What the hell is going on?" Elena looked up at me, her eyes wide and filled with a horror I couldn't comprehend. "Julian," she sobbed, crawling backward as if my father were a demon. He came in here. He forced his way in. I was napping. Oh God, Julian," he touched me. The air left the room. The world tilted on its axis. I looked at my father. He was bleeding from the lip, his glasses askew, clutching a torn piece of paper in his hand. "Dad," I whispered. Arthur shook his head, his eyes pleading. "No, Julian, I didn't. I heard a noise. I came to check." She started screaming. "You lying piece of trash," Marcus shouted, lunging forward again. I held him back, my mind racing. My father, the man who wouldn't even date after my mother died because he said his heart was full. The man who read Bible verses to me before bed until I was 12. It was impossible, yet the evidence was visceral. The torn dress, the tears, the sheer panic in the woman I was about to marry. "He's a predator, Julian," Marcus spat, adjusting his expensive cufflinks. "Look at him, a lonely old hillbilly thinking he can take what he wants just because his son made some money. We have to call the police." "No," I said instinctively. "No police. We handle this here." Elena's mother, a woman made of ice and pearls, stepped forward, her face a mask of disdain. "Handle it. He assaulted my daughter on her engagement day. Look at this," she pointed to the floor. There, gleaming on the carpet near my father's muddy boot, was a pearl. It matched the broken string around Elena's neck. And look at his pocket. Marcus reached into my father's jacket before I could stop him and pulled out a small velvet bag. He dumped it. Out fell a diamond bracelet. Elena's bracelet. The room gasped. "He's a thief and a rapist," Elena's mother hissed. Dad, I said, my voice shaking. Tell me this isn't true. Tell me you didn't steal that. Arthur looked at the bracelet, then at me. His silence was deafening. He didn't defend himself. He just looked at me with a sorrow so profound it felt like a physical weight. I found it, he stammered. Found it, Marcus laughed, a cruel barking sound. In her room, while she was sleeping. And what is this? Marcus snatched the paper my father was holding. It was an old photograph, a picture of my mother. Marcus tore it in half, letting the pieces flutter to the floor, and he tore up the property deed we found in his pocket. Probably stole that too. That deed is mine, Arthur suddenly shouted, a surprising burst of anger. It's for the house at Clearwater Bay. I bought it for Julian. You bought a $10 million villa? Marcus scoffed. You can't even afford the shoes on your feet, old man. Did you steal the money from your son, or did you steal the deed from Alina? It was clear what everyone believed. The narrative was perfect. The poor leeching father, jealous and perverted, snapping on the day of his son's wedding. I felt a nausea rising in me. Doubt, insidious and snake-like, coiled around my heart. Alina was trembling, her fear looking so genuine. Why would she lie? Why would she destroy her own engagement? It didn't make sense. Unless it was true, the thought broke me. I looked at my father, the man I idolized, and saw a stranger. Dad, I said, my voice cold. Did you touch her? Julian, Arthur said softly. You know me. I looked at Alina. She was shaking her head, tears streaming. He said I was pretty, Julian. He said I looked like his wife. And then he grabbed me. Rage, hot and blinding, surged through me, not at my father, but at the situation, at the destruction of my life. But the evidence was piling up. The witnesses, two of Alina's bridesmaids, stepped forward. We saw him, one whispered. We saw him lurking in the hallway earlier. Staring at her, we saw him run out of the room pulling up his pants. It was a lie, it had to be, but the social pressure in the room was a crushing weight. Marcus grabbed my father by the collar. We're locking him in the security room until the police come. And Julian, if you try to stop us, the Sterling Group pulls its funding from Thorn Tech by morning. You know we hold your debt. The threat hit its mark. My company was leveraged to the hilt, dependent on the Sterling Group's capital. Marcus knew it. He was holding my legacy hostage against my father's freedom. I stood frozen, a coward in a tuxedo, as they dragged my father away. He didn't fight. He just looked back at me, his eyes dry, and whispered, "Trust your heart, son." Then he was gone. The hours that followed were a blur of lawyers and damage control. Alina was sedated in the master suite. Her family was circling like vultures, demanding I denounce my father publicly to save the merger, to save the wedding image. I sat in my office at the hotel, pouring drink after drink, staring at the rain lashing the glass. I needed to see the security footage. I needed to know. I went down to the security office. The head of security, a man named Miller who I had tipped generously in the past, looked pale. "Mr. Thorne, the system, it malfunctioned." Malfunctioned? I slammed my hand on the desk. On the executive floor, today of all days, Miller swallowed hard. The files from 11:00 a.m. to 12:00 p.m. are corrupted, gone. Someone wiped them. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. My father didn't know how to use a smartphone, let alone wipe a localized server. Someone else did this. Someone who wanted to hide the truth. I went back up to the penthouse, avoiding the guests who were whispering in the corridors. I needed to talk to Alina. I needed to look her in the eyes. She was awake, sitting up in bed, looking fragile. "Julian," she whispered, reaching for my hand. I pulled away. "Who wiped the tapes, Alina?" Her eyes flickered. A micro-expression of panic before the mask of the victim slid back into place. "What? I don't know what you mean. The cameras, they were wiped. If he attacked you, that footage would put him in jail for life." "Why is it gone?" She started to cry again. "Are you blaming me? I was assaulted. Your father is a monster. And you care more about him than me. I'm pregnant, Julian." The words stopped me dead. "Pregnant? Yes. I was going to surprise you at the reception, and he almost hurt our baby." The guilt washed over me, drowning my suspicion. A child. I was going to be a father. I sank to my knees beside the bed. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I'm so sorry. I promise I'll handle it. I'll make sure he can't hurt us again." She stroked my hair, a smile playing on her lips that I couldn't see. "Good," she cooed. "Good. Just let Marcus handle the legal side. We need to protect our reputation." I left the room feeling hollowed out. I had chosen my future over my past. I went to the security room where they were holding Arthur. He was sitting on a metal chair, nursing his split lip. He didn't look up when I entered. "Dad," I said, "Alina is pregnant." Arthur stiffened. He looked up, his eyes sharp. "Pregnant? That's convenient." "Stop it," I snapped. "Just stop. I can get you a lawyer. We can plead insanity or dementia. We can send you to a home. Just admit it so we can move on." "Admit what?" Arthur stood up, his presence suddenly filling the small room. "Admit to a crime I didn't commit." "Julian, look at me. Am I that man? The evidence, Dad, the bracelet, the witnesses. The witnesses are her friends. Arthur shouted, and the bracelet, I found it in the hallway. I picked it up to give it to her. When I went to her door to return it, I heard voices. A man's voice, not yours. Froze. A man who? I opened the door, Arthur said, his voice dropping to a harsh whisper, and I saw her with Marcus. They weren't fighting, Julian, they were intimate. My stomach churned. Marcus, her brother-in-law, that's sick, that's a lie, is it? Arthur stepped closer. She saw me, she screamed. Marcus attacked me. They staged it, Julian, to shut me up. Because if I told you, the wedding would be off. The Sterling Group merger would die, and Marcus would lose his position if his wife found out. It's a setup. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to, but the alternative was accepting that my entire life was a lie, that the woman I loved was a sociopath. It was easier to believe my father was senile, easier to believe he was broken than to believe my reality was glass. You're lying, I whispered, backing away. You're jealous because I'm successful and you're nothing. You're just a farmer, Dad. You don't understand this world. Arthur looked at me as if I had struck him. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, battered digital camcorder. It was old, the kind with tapes. He placed it on the table. Watch the tape, Julian. If you have any love left for me, watch the tape. Then he sat back down and turned away. I grabbed the camera and fled. I sat in my car in the underground parking garage, the camera heavy in my hand. It was an old Sony. I flipped the screen open. It was in playback mode. I pressed play. The video was shaky. It was dated today, timestamp 10:30 a.m. My father's face filled the frame. He was in his hotel room. Hey Mary, he said, speaking to the lens. It's me, I'm in Seattle. Our boy is getting married today. You'd be so proud. He looks just like you in his tuxedo. He panned the camera around the room, showing the view. I'm nervous, Mary. I don't fit in here, but I bought him a house. That place by the water he liked. Used the savings from the big account. I hope he accepts it. I don't want him to know about the money yet. He needs to build his own way, but I want him to be safe. The video continued. He set the camera down on the dresser, leaving it recording while he paced, practicing a speech. The timestamp ticked forward. 11:00 a.m., 11:15 a.m., 11:30 a.m. He was in the room the whole time. He never left. The accusation that he was in Alina's room at 11:15 was physically impossible. He was on video alone, talking to his dead wife. Tears blurred my vision. He was innocent. He was completely, undeniably innocent. And then at 11:45 a.m. on the tape, there was a knock at his door. He went to answer it. The camera angle caught the hallway. It was a maid. She handed him something. Sir, you dropped this in the hall earlier. It was the bracelet. He hadn't stolen it. He hadn't found it in Alina's room. The maid had returned it to him. I scrubbed the video forward. He left the room at 11:50 a.m., holding the bracelet, presumably to return it to Alina. The confrontation happened minutes later. The realization was a physical agony. Alina had lied. Marcus had lied. They had framed an innocent man, my father, to cover up their incestuous affair, and I had called him a nothing. I had sided with the vipers. I roared in the silence of the car, slamming my fists against the steering wheel until my knuckles bled. I wiped my face. I had to fix this, but I couldn't just walk back in there. Marcus held my debt. Alina held the public sentiment. If I exposed them now, they would bury the evidence, destroy the company, and drag my father's name through the mud in a legal battle we couldn't afford. I needed leverage. I looked at the camera again. My father had mentioned a big account, a house in Clearwater Bay. That was prime real estate. Millions. How could a farmer afford that? I remembered the property deed Marcus had torn up. I drove back to the hotel, but instead of going to the penthouse, I went to the security holding room. The guard tried to stop me, but I shoved past him. Arthur looked up. I played the tape. Dad, I said, my voice cracking. I know you didn't do it. Arthur exhaled, a long, shuddering breath. Thank God. Dad, the house, the money, where did you get it? We need to know what we're fighting with. Marcus is going to bankrupt me if I fight this. Arthur stood up, and for the first time his posture changed. The slump of the tired farmer vanished. He straightened his spine, and an aura of immense quiet power radiated from him. It was a transformation so jarring I stepped back. Julian, he said, his voice no longer gravelly but sharp, commanding. I didn't want you to know this way. I wanted you to build your own character, to not be corrupted by unearned wealth. But the time for lessons is over. What are you talking about? Who are you? I'm not just a farmer, Julian. Have you heard of Vanguard Holdings? I laughed, a sharp, hysterical sound. Vanguard, the global conglomerate. They own half the shipping in the Pacific. They're a phantom corporation. No one knows who the chairman is. Arthur reached into the lining of his cheap suit jacket and pulled out a black card made of anodized titanium. He tossed it to me. It bore the Vanguard crest. And the name, Arthur V. Vance. I am the chairman, he said simply. I started Vanguard 30 years ago. I moved us to the farm to keep you away from the kidnappers, the corporate spies, the fake friends. I wanted you to be real. My mind short-circuited. My father, the man who coupon-clipped for canned beans, was one of the richest men on the planet. So Arthur adjusted his cuffs, his eyes cold as flint. They want to play games with my son. They want to threaten you with bankruptcy. They want to frame me. He walked to the door of the holding room. Open this door, he ordered the guard. The guard hesitated, then looked at Arthur's face and instinctively obeyed. Dad, what are you going to do? I asked, following him. He strode toward the elevator, moving with the gait of a predator. I'm going to buy this hotel, then I'm going to buy Sterling Group, and then I'm going to ruin them. We went up to the ballroom. The engagement party had turned into a whispered court of judgment. Elena was there, playing the victim, surrounded by sympathizers. Marcus was holding court near the bar, looking smug. When the doors opened and I walked in with my father, the room went silent. Look who's back, Marcus sneered. The rapist and the bankrupt son. Did you come to beg for a settlement? Elena looked at me, tears instantly welling up. Julian, how could you bring him here? After what he did. Drop the act, Elena, I said, my voice projecting across the silent room. I walked to the center of the dance floor. I hooked the camcorder up to the massive projection screen meant for our relationship montage. What are you doing? Marcus demanded, stepping forward. Security, remove them. Don't bother, my father said. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried a weight that stopped the security guards in their tracks. I just bought the Obsidian Grand. The transaction cleared 2 minutes ago. I own the floor you're standing on. Marcus laughed nervously. You're delusional. You're a broke farmer. I pressed play. The video of my father, alone in his room at the time of the alleged assault, played on the 50-foot screen. The timestamp was undeniable. The audio of him talking to his dead wife echoed through the hall, heartbreaking and pure. The crowd murmured. The narrative was fracturing. Then I played the part where the maid returned the bracelet. That's impossible, Elena stammered, her face draining of color. That video is fake. It's not fake, I said, but your pregnancy is. I looked at the medical records I had pulled from the cloud on my way up, a hunch I had followed. I hacked your cloud account, Elena. You had a termination procedure 3 weeks ago. There is no baby. The room erupted. Elena gasped, hand to her mouth. Marcus looked like a cornered rat. This is slander, Marcus shouted. I'll sue you. I'll destroy your little tech company, Julian. You'll be on the street. My father stepped forward. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. He dialed a number on speaker. Yes, Chairman, a voice answered. The entire room recognized the voice. It was the CEO of the Global Banking Federation. Execute Order 66 on Sterling Group, my father said. Call in their debts, freeze their assets, and initiate a hostile takeover of the Montclair Family Trust. Consider it done, sir, the voice replied. Who are you? Marcus whispered, shaking. My father smiled, a terrifying shark-like grin. I'm the man whose shoes you said I couldn't afford. I am Arthur Vance, majority shareholder of Vanguard Holdings, and you, Mr. Montclair, are currently trespassing on my property. The color drained from Marcus's face so completely he looked like a corpse. Vanguard, the myth, the Montclair family, Elena's parents, looked ready to faint. They had insulted a man who could buy their entire lineage with pocket change. Police sirens wailed in the distance. Real police. I had called them on the drive back. Officers swarmed the ballroom, but they weren't coming for my father. I have sworn statements from the hotel staff, I said to the lead detective, and video evidence of a false police report, attempted extortion, and assault on a senior citizen. The detective looked at the video on the screen, then at Marcus and Elena. Marcus Thorne, Elena Cross, you're under arrest. Elena screamed, throwing herself at me. Julian, no, I love you, he forced me. Marcus forced me. I pushed her away. She stumbled, falling onto the hem of her ruined wedding dress. It was Marcus, she shrieked, turning on her lover instantly. He made me do it. He said we needed the money. He said if I didn't frame your dad, he'd tell you about the affair. So you admit the affair, I said coldly. She froze, realizing her mistake. The handcuffs clicked around her wrists. As they dragged her away, she looked back at me, her eyes dead. I never loved you, she spat. You were just a paycheck, a boring, safe paycheck. I watched her go, feeling a piece of my soul wither and die. But then I felt a hand on my shoulder, heavy, warm, calloused. I turned to see my father. He wasn't the chairman now. He was just Dad. I'm sorry, son, he said softly. I'm sorry you had to see the ugly side of the world today. I looked at him, tears streaming down my face. You saved me, I said. You saved me from a life of lies. Why did you hide it? Why the farm? Arthur looked out the window at the rain, which was finally stopping. Because Julian, wealth masks who people really are. On the farm, when you made a friend, you knew they liked you. When you fell in love, you knew it was real. I want to give you that. I failed you today by not being honest sooner. No, I said, hugging him. You didn't fail. I failed. I doubted you. Can you forgive me? Arthur smiled, hugging me back tight enough to crack ribs. There is nothing to forgive. You're my son. Now let's get out of here. I'm starving, and this fancy food tastes like cardboard. Let's go get a burger. We walked out of the ballroom, leaving the weeping Montclairs and the shattered ruins of my engagement behind. The media was already swarming the lobby, cameras flashing, shouting questions about the secret billionaire. We ignored them. We got into my father's battered pickup truck, which the valets had parked next to the Ferraris, and drove into the night. The city lights blurred, but for the first time in years, my vision was clear. I had lost a fiancé, a merger, and my innocence. But I had regained my father. And as we drove toward the burger joint, the radio playing an old country song he loved, I knew that was a trade I would make 1,000 times over. The nightmare was over. The real life, the honest life, was just beginning.